What's up guys, it's Farron, back again with another video. It's been a while, I've had some computer troubles I'm still trying to sort out, but there was a suggestion that caught my eye in one of the videos that I'd made. Dark Chrono had commented making a suggestion, making videos pertaining to the other witches that are spoken about in Bayonetta's lore. In particular when reading the descriptions of the accessories and stuff like that for Bayonetta. It's something I considered myself beforehand, but I wasn't sure if it's something that people would want to hear about, and I knew it would take quite a bit of research to get, to be able to talk about some of these different historical figures to any degree of accuracy. But the fact that you had commented about that, it kind of validates the idea, and I've decided I'm going to go ahead and do it. So hey, thanks for the suggestion, Dark Chrono. So what I thought I'd do is I'd make a series of videos talking about the different witches that were spoken about in passing within Bayonetta's lore. In particular, if you read the descriptions of the accessories and things like that in Bayonetta. So these are just going to be my own theories, but what I've done is I'm going to be doing research on these different historical figures and culture and things like that pertaining to real life history. So that's going to take me some time. I have to do research and then go ahead and add that research and real history to the theories of the characters that are mentioned in Bayonetta. So in this particular case, I'm going to be talking about Cleopatra. So these are going to be my theories on what the character could be like if they were officially shown or represented in Bayonetta itself. To the best of my knowledge, based on the research I've done on the real life Cleopatra in Egypt, as well as my knowledge on the lore of Bayonetta and the Umber Witches and everything. So one thing to keep in mind here is that this is just a fan theory. It's conceptual and it's not official, so it's going to be a little rough around the edges, as some of my knowledge on actual historical events and historical figures, as well as some of the fictional figures and events in Bayonetta, may not be entirely accurate. But just remember that this is all conceptual. It's all just fan theory. So feel free to correct me on certain things if you find I say something wrong or inaccurate. But just remember that it's all fan theory. So there's going to be some stuff that might be a little inaccurate or just my own interpretation. I'm going to be as accurate as I can, but that's just my disclaimer. Okay, so Cleopatra in Bayonetta. One of the first things that I had to do was I had to first find out when Cleopatra was born, right? So I have an idea of what time period this would take place in. And then I had to ask myself, well, when did all of the things that happened in Bayonetta take place, right? Basically, the witch hunts and stuff like that is what I'm referring to. And so I can place where Cleopatra existed during that time. So in Bayonetta, it's mentioned that all the ancient stuff, like the witch hunts and stuff like that, and the ancient war between the witches and the sages, that was something around 500 years before the present time of Bayonetta, which I'm assuming is present day, right? When you start playing Bayonetta and you're in present day, it literally just says present day. So we can assume it's like, 2000-ish, right? Probably something around that, maybe the 90s, but probably 2000-ish. So if you go back 500 years, I believe that places you somewhere around the 14th century. Now, once I came to that realization, it dawned on me, that's a long time ago, but that's not that long ago. And that would mean that Cleopatra would predate those events by a lot. In fact, the witch hunt still took place in the Common Era, so it's not even that ancient. But if we're going to go back to Cleopatra's era, then we're going to have to go back before the Common Era, because Cleopatra was born in 69 BC. So that means we have to go back like at least 1,368 years. Now, once we go back before the Common Era to when Cleopatra was born, even then, some Egyptologists, I believe, still don't consider that the ancient era, right? Because the ancient era of Egypt had already long since passed. It had already been established. And at this point, Egypt is in its kind of its final years. Cleopatra was the final ruler of Egypt. And everything that Egypt was known for had already been done before Cleopatra came into power. However, Cleopatra herself, almost separate from Egypt, seemed to become a recognizable figure. This is why I think she shows up in different forms of media, such as games and movies and things like this. Now, reading the description of the Salene's light accessory in Bayonetta, it reads, Salene's light, An ancient brace crafted by the Egyptian witch Cleopatra. When its wearer is attacked, witch time will be instantly triggered, expending magical power. As leader of the Egyptian practitioners of magic, Cleopatra developed this guard to assist those who had trouble grasping the finer points of witch time. So based on that description of the Saline Lights accessory, it seems that Bayonetta's version of Cleopatra is focusing on the aspect of her that was scholarly, as she knew 9 languages and wrote books on beauty, philosophy, and medicine. So this Bayonetta version of Cleopatra must have also been very adept at the dark magical arts of the Umbra witches, considering she was the leader of the Egyptian practitioners of magic. And given how Cleopatra was essentially what would amount to, I believe, a scholar for her time, it wouldn't be too far out of character to say that in Bayonetta she probably also wrote books on the magical arts as well. Cleopatra was known to be lively, very witty, and was a very captivating and beautiful woman. And as such, she was able to win the hearts of 2 of Rome's most well-renowned politicians and generals. But it's said that everything that she did for her people, to protect them, and Egypt's overall prosperity. There were even those who identified Cleopatra as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis. Isis was oftentimes referred to as the idealized woman. She was the perfect woman. She was fierce when she needed to be, witty, and also very protective of her people. These are things that Cleopatra was also known to be. But this link to her being a reincarnation of Isis is where the theory of her being a character in Bayonetta really kind of takes hold for me. You see, Isis, she was a magical healer. She tended to the sick, and she could bring the dead back to life. At times, she would take the form of a scorpion, a bird, a cow, and she was even associated with the goddess's pantheon, the Eye of Ra. Now, apparently the Eye of Ra was actually the Eye of Destruction. Now, it was a symbol of destruction, but it was destruction of those who would get in the way of Egypt's prosperity, and it was there as a means of protection. That was the idea. It was a symbol of protection through destruction. So if we bring all that together, in Bayonetta, we could have had a Cleopatra who could have been essentially this beautiful woman who was just perfect in seemingly all ways, according to her people. She was fierce and powerful when she needed to be, but she was also very witty and charismatic, and she was also very protective of her people. She was a magical healer. She had extraordinary magical powers. She was essentially a scholar whose knowledge of the Umbran arts was to such a degree that she could at times even bring the dead back to life. She could shapeshift into a deadly scorpion. She could soar in the sky as a bird, or she could even take the form of a cow, which one could maybe assume would be a symbol of a representation of nourishment. Obviously, shapeshifting into animals isn't a new thing for Umbra witches, as we've seen with Jeanne, Rosa, and Bayonetta. They can all shapeshift into various animals. Now, where things really get interesting is with the Eye of Ra. Because what if the Eye of Ra is actually the Egyptian interpretation of the eyes of the world? Now, since ancient Egypt predates Bayonetta, that means that somebody had to have the eyes of the world before Balder and Bayonetta, right? They had to be passed on through generations, because the god of chaos Aesir had supplied the humans with the eyes of the world long before the timeline of Bayonetta, right? The cultures of the Umbra witches and Lumen sages were created over generations upon generations upon generations. So that means others must have had the eyes of the world first. What if Cleopatra, being considered a reincarnation of Isis, and Isis being a part of the pantheon of goddesses who are associated with the Eye of Ra, what if Cleopatra had the left eye of the world? What if the Eye of Ra? That was just their word for it, their term for it, and they're different terms depending on what culture you're a part of. You know how different cultures in the real world, they have different words for the same exact thing. What if the Eye of Ra is just the left eye of the world? The only hang up there is that, according to my research, the Eye of Ra is actually the right eye, and then the Eye of Horus is the left eye. So that kind of doesn't fit, but for the sake of just the theory, you could switch them, and it doesn't really change things too much. But it's still a really cool concept, a cool theory, In terms of some of the contracts that maybe Cleopatra would have made, maybe she could have had a contract with her son Horus, and she could summon his wings, similar to how Bayonetta could summon the wings of Malphus. she could maybe her contract, her primary contract, like Bayonetta's contract with Madama Butterfly, could have been with the god of death, the embodiment of the dead and the king of the underworld, Osiris, who was known to be her lover, as well as her brother. You know, they were kind of into that stuff back then in ancient Egypt. But in any case, that would basically be her familiar, right? The one that would, you know, when you see her shadow, it would be the shadow of Osiris, the king of the underworld. And whenever she, you know, she would use her full power, he would come out and he would strike for her. You know, kind of like, you know, Madama Butterfly does for Bayonetta. So based on the research that I've done and the association of Cleopatra with a goddess and the goddess's association with high levels of magic and healing magic as well as destructive magic, it seems like Cleopatra is in Bayonetta could have possibly be a rather extraordinarily powerful and revered witch, as well as extraordinarily smart and philosophical, considering that in order for her to make the Salene's light accessory for some of her people to help them tap into witch time, she must have been very well versed in witch time and the Umbran arts in general in order to actually craft item that can help to tap into an Umbra witch's ability to use witch time when they get hurt or when they're in danger, even if they don't really know how to use witch time themselves. Having an accessory that can do it, basically do it for them, or tap into their latent abilities to activate it without them fully understanding how to do it, must show that Cleopatra was actually quite the scholar. So that's pretty much it, guys. What do you guys think of this theory? It took me a while to put this together because I had to do quite a bit of research on, you know, ancient Egypt and the different timelines and, you know, ancient Rome and all these different kinds of things. And like I said, I had some computer troubles that I'm still trying to work out. So what do you guys think? Do you have any theories yourself? Who would you like to see next? I actually have a few other ideas because I was basically just looking through the accessories and the different weapons and looking at the different lore and religious elements and mythologies that are used in Bayonetta already and kind of conceptualizing certain theories. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. We can have a little bit of a dialogue, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. It's Fahrenheit signing out. Later, guys.